Hello, I'm your host, Giselle Gamby, and this is the Intuitive Pull Podcast, where together we'll embrace the plans we did not make yet, unfold businesses and lives that are so much greater in wealth in all ways than any business or life plan could ever achieve. My wish is that you make intuition your most trusted advisor. So buckle up, get present, and let's go. Hello, and welcome back to the beautiful, loyal listeners, and welcome to our new listeners. Thank you for your patience in receiving this episode, as I didn't record one last week. It's been like a jigsaw puzzle where I've had to put the pieces of the jigsaw together to see what actual picture I was offering you. And thankfully, this morning, I could see how all the jigsaw pieces came together to form this episode. So today's episode is entitled, It's Okay to Be Powerful, Part 2. You may remember the episode that I'd created last year called It's Okay to Be Powerful. It actually has received one of the most downloads and social media posts where I've spoken to this idea of it's okay to be powerful. There's been a huge resonance with it. So when I put the jigsaw pieces together today, I realized actually it's the same theme. It's just an extension. So welcome to It's Okay to Be Powerful Part 2. And I want to firstly honor someone very special whose book has just been released. Her name is Susie De Jong. I worked with Susie last year. And Susie has absolutely come to a place of knowing that it's okay to be powerful. In fact, her book called The Untangling is the expression of that. So congratulations, Susie. I will put in the show notes how to purchase the book. So please check out the show notes. And if you're interested to untangle your own relationships with self and others, please check Susie's book out called The Untangling. Once again, absolutely honoring you, Susie De Jong. Love you dearly. So it's okay to be powerful, Part 2. I have a client who I've just completed with, just a little over a year with. And she said to me, I now know how to hold power. I feel powerful. I'm not frightened of it anymore. And really, that is the headline of today's conversation. In part 1 of It's Okay to Be Powerful, we talked about being powerful doesn't mean that you're going to lose yourself. It doesn't mean that you're going to be burdened. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have time or energy. It doesn't mean that you're going to be taxed, which is what we often think, that if we're powerful, then that is going to be the consequence of that. And what I shared in part 1 was that, in fact, the opposite is true, that the more powerful we are, the more freedom we have and the more energy we have in return. Because when we're of service from a place of freedom and authenticity and joy, it lights us up even more rather than taxes us. So that was part 1. So please go back to that episode if you wish to revisit that. Today's episode around this idea that it's okay to be powerful is an extension of the previous episode called Into Freedom. In the previous episode, I talked about being called into freedom from identities that we have put on. So today, I'm going to be sharing some experiences that I've been having with clients. And we're actually talking about, this is like real time, live, what's happening now. So in my sharing of what's happening with current clients, the intention is for you to recognize identities that you have put on, acknowledging that these identities have been designed by the ego to keep us safe. And yet what happens is that the more we attach to these identities, the more we are in resistance to being powerful. So it's really important for you to have a look at and explore what identities you may already know of, or maybe you're going to have a deepened understanding of your identities, or maybe you'll even be able to witness other identities that you didn't even know that you put on. So let's go. So I'm going to start with a subject that is a tangible one. And it's one of the big ones. And it's the identity around financial abundance and wealth. So when we have identities around financial abundance and wealth that keep us in resistance to being powerful, we can buy into the story that we don't have a natural capacity to be financially abundant. We can buy into the idea that we are not like other people who we perceive to be incredibly capable at creating financial wealth and abundance. And so as we're in comparison with others who we believe or we put on pedestals, we dismiss ourselves. And this creates separation. And you may even say, if you're resonating with this identity, you might even say to yourself and to others, and you might even convince yourself, in fact, you might even say that you're detached, when really that's not true. Really, it's not detachment. You're being dishonest with yourself. It's the belief that you just don't have the capacity to create financial abundance and wealth. Perhaps it's never been on you to do that. Perhaps it's been on others, so you haven't had to take responsibility. Perhaps, and I would like to delete that word, perhaps. I'll say it's a fact, in fact, that you have allowed yourself to be rescued by others who take responsibility and believe that they have and know that they have a natural capacity to earn financial abundance and wealth. And so do you see the different identities? Do you see that when you believe that you don't have a natural capacity, you might say you're not good at it, that the default is to be rescued by others who are good at it? And the truth is, you've probably just, again, let me delete that word probably. It's a fact that you have not ever taken 100% personal responsibility to be the predominant creative force in your life around financial abundance and wealth. And you played the role of victim. And what does a victim do? They get rescued. So the more that we stay in that paradigm, the more we stay powerless, the more we do not feel powerful. And where does this all derive from? Not feeling worthy. At the end of the day, a lack of deservedness. That's what drives this belief that we don't have a natural capacity to earn financial abundance and wealth. And the irony is that the treasure you seek to find is in the cave you fear to enter. So I would like to suggest that there's treasure here, that on the other side of your belief of not having a natural capacity to earn financial abundance and wealth, that in fact you have a great capacity, and more than likely a capacity that is authentic rather than a capacity that is driven by force and control, or indeed is driven by the belief that being financially abundant and wealthy makes the person valid and valued in the world. Because that's the other side of the pendulum around identities, around financial abundance, is that we can also believe that we are only valid and valued by the amount of money that we earn. So I'm not talking about that. Let me just say it again so that it can go in a little bit deeper, that there is irony here. The treasure you seek to find is in the cave you fear to enter. If you believe that you've not had a natural capacity to earn financial abundance, and you've played victim and you've asked to be rescued or inadvertently had people rescue you, and you go beyond this story, that you will see, should you choose to be the predominant creative force of your life around this topic of abundance, you will see that you can earn abundantly, but from a place of authenticity. As I always say, authenticity is profitable. So let me just say that that's probably a mission that I am charging you with in this episode, just to see, go and see the truth, that in contrast to believing that you don't have the capacity, that you have an incredible capacity, and it's not the capacity that most people earn financial abundance from. So the next subject that has us not be okay to be powerful is the subject of our capacity levels, how much capacity we have. If you study the Enneagram, one of my favorite personality, or actually my very favorite personality profiling system, this is the number 7. We believe that we don't have the capacity, we don't have the time, money, or resources. And also, I would say that this subject around capacity levels is also to do with other belief systems, unworthiness, and also the need to control. So when we have a funky relationship with our capacity levels, we downsize our real capacity levels. We make ourselves smaller. And the way that we do that, or one of the ways that we do that, is that we don't stick our neck out too far, just in case we're made wrong for doing so, just in case it causes disturbance, just in case it causes some cracks in the status quo. We don't want to be rude. We don't want to be disrespectful. We don't want to step on any toes. And so we don't stick our necks out. And thus we downsize our real capacity levels. And another reason why we downsize our real capacity levels, and I'm going to talk about this because it's been a subject that I've heard a few times in the last week. And I'm going to talk about this to the mums out there. But equally, I had a conversation at a 50th birthday party on Saturday night to a dear friend who was also talking about her husband. So whilst I'm talking about the mums, because I've spoken to several mums recently about this subject, this is not just for the mums. This is also for people who are in transition. And we all go through transition depending on where we're at in our lives. You know, our kids grow up, or circumstances change, or we actually have children, or we turn 50. So this is about a loss of confidence. So let me speak to the mums here that are listening. I remember when I had Ruby Rose, and she's almost 11 now, and I lost my confidence for a couple of years. I had a conversation with somebody last week and another conversation with somebody in the weekend where who they once knew themselves to be, this really confident, sassy, smart, courageous woman, seems to have disappeared. And it's understandable because when we become mums, we assume another role and we take on new responsibilities, and there can be a split. And so when we experience that loss of confidence, the default is to downsize our real capacity levels. The default is to not stick our necks out. The default is to not create disturbance. And the question is really, like, who are we now? And the ultimate question is, who are we invited to become? Because as multidimensional beings, which is who we really are, there is no split. We are able to be in our wholeness in the whole of our lives, and thus there is no cost or compromise to any aspects of our lives. So that's to the mums out there. And to the men who believe that they need to carry so much on their shoulders, to the men where life circumstances change, that can also create a lack of confidence and can also in turn create a belief that they need to downsize their real capacity levels. You know, and at the very worst, that can lead to depression. And at the very, very, very worst, we know that in Australia, 75% of suicides are male. And so I want to really affirm that the idea that we are limited in the context of our capacity levels is simply a story that we are telling ourselves, is simply an identity that we are attaching to, and it's not the truth. The next subject, and I feel like this is a really big one. So this is one that's really been front of mind for me this year, surprisingly so actually, because I've realized that we get pulled into a remembering of where we didn't believe that we belonged, but we always did. So when we follow the intuitive pull, we get pulled into a remembering of where we didn't believe we belonged, but always did. Again, it's that irony piece. So this is a big one, this sense of belonging. Brené Brown talks a lot about belonging and, says things like, all that us in our humanity wants is to be loved and to belong. And we absolutely limit our capacity to be powerful when this sense of belonging and acceptance is made vulnerable. We absolutely limit our capacity to be powerful when this sense of belonging and acceptance is made vulnerable. I have a beautiful, beautiful client that I'm working with at the moment. And just recently, she told me some stories about how when she was at high school, she was made head prefect, and how she was this person who just innately saw the possibilities, just innately saw what an incredible school it already was, and just innately saw possibilities for it becoming an even greater school. She didn't seek out to be made head prefect. She was simply given that position. And then something happened, which, in her words, shattered her. And that is that a teacher misunderstood who she was and went and told all the classes about something that she thought that she did, and thus she was humiliated. And what did she do as a result of that? She went under the radar. She absolutely never stuck her head out. And she even told me that she believed that she was not a leader. And not only that she believed she was not a leader, she actually said that that was a fact. That was a fact. And through our conversations, she could see that prior to that experience, that she had so much excitement for possibility that, in her words, she lost her fear. Don't you love that? I loved when she said that to me. She said, I had so much excitement that I lost my fear. And so she has been remembering that. And she's been choosing to return, to come home to this leader of possibilities. And in doing so, this belief that she doesn't belong anywhere is now being superseded by her excitement to lose her fear. Another story, another client, I asked her last week, what's her cave been? The cave that she's feared to enter. And I have permission to speak about this, of course, very anonymously. And she talked about a situation where she was in her late teens and had gone out and had been raped by several men. And what she did with herself as a result of that was that she kept on using this word. She made herself illegitimate. That word illegitimate kept on being repeated. And she had a story that's all that she was good for. And because she had no positive modeling in her family, she thus didn't know how to be in the world. She had no reference to be in the world. In addition to the situation that she had with those men about not being legitimate and thinking that's all she's good for, she didn't belong. And so thankfully, however, she decided a few years later to do a big fuck you to those men. And it's through that big fuck you to those men that she actually earned 3 degrees. And more recently, through our coaching, she turned towards that experience and she started to see herself through the eyes of unconditional love. And she realized that that fuck you now had turned into true, authentic power. And she said to me, I'm making space for others to be in the world. And maybe it's okay to not be of the world. Maybe it's okay to not fit in. Maybe it's okay to not belong, because that's where the new comes from. And this woman is 100% someone who, in her leadership, is bringing new vision and new ways of being in the world from this place of deep personal reflection and a decision to lead from love. And we completed the session, and she said to me, this has been a time of exponential growth versus linear growth. She said if she was doing a management course instead of doing the coaching, she said she would have recognized her patterns and shifted them around, and there would have been a linear growth cycle. But instead, by facing into her cave and her caves, I should say, this has been a time of exponential growth from the freedom that she now experiences. So absolutely honoring this very powerful woman who, when I go back to the beginning of this episode, said, I now know how to hold my power. It's okay to be powerful. I feel powerful, and I'm no longer afraid to be powerful. So thank you. Thank you for feeding this episode, for headlining this episode. And I know that this part of the episode is a very intimate one and has the ability to create quite a profound exploration with people. And I just want to remind you that I'm here to speak to, should you wish. I realized, thanks to someone telling me recently, I listened to your episode, but I didn't know how to reach out to you, that I must let you know that my details are in the show notes. So please go to the show notes to reach out to me. So in summary of this subject around not belonging, and that being a classic resistance piece to being powerful, Brené Brown said this: true belonging is the spiritual practice of believing in and belonging to yourself so deeply that you can share your most authentic self with the world and find sacredness in both being a part of something and standing alone in the wilderness. True belonging doesn't require you to change who you are. It requires you to be who you are. And so we can see that not being of the world, as this wonderful, powerful woman has demonstrated, is in fact a superpower. And the final identity that I want to speak to, the final subject line that I want to speak to that has us being in resistance to being powerful, is the need to control. And this is a big one. This is a big one. And this identity, if it is engaged with at a maximum level, let's say, it's a very obsessive identity. It's an identity that needs to control the process and needs to understand the process. And it does that in order to avoid chaos, madness, and abandonment. And as I've always said repeatedly through these episodes, you can't understand the process before you have the experience of it. Once you surrender to having the experience, then you will have the understanding. So as I said, this is a tricky one, because the identity of control just so needs to understand that need, that addiction to understanding creates a massive divide with the ability of actually having the experience, which would lead to the understanding. So this identity of control is an identity of limitation. It strangles our unlimited and our innate power. This identity of control is about efficiency and task orientation. It's mechanical, it's transactional. There's a lack of emotion and feeling. There's an absence of intuition and knowingness. And the thing is, with this identity, the biggest risk and the greatest reward to the one who needs to control is to let go, and surrender into the intuitive pull. I don't have this identity too much. But I do remember a time in Kenya when I was facilitating a retreat, and I had just arrived and I was having lunch with my peers and friends. And then all of a sudden, I started to feel really nervous. So the retreat hadn't started yet. We literally arrived. What had happened was I walked over to a table of people who were clients of my peer and dear friend, Michelle Richmond, who organizes these retreats in Kenya and who I co-facilitate with. And I introduced myself. And then when I learned a little bit about them, I realized that actually they were quite new to this world of coaching. And my thinking process went to, now I need to go into teaching mode. I didn't really want to do that. I kind of wanted to start where my clients, where the starting point of my clients was. And I went into anxiety as a result of that. And I shared it with my friends who I was having lunch with. And then I said, I realized that I got this. What has happened is that I feel like I need to control. I need to go and become the teacher. And I don't really want to become the teacher. I had this intuitive guidance, which was let go of control. Say nothing if nothing needs to be said. It's like, what? I'm the facilitator of this retreat. How can I say nothing if nothing needs to be said? Anyway, I said yes to that. And the experience of the retreat was remarkable because what happened was from the very get-go, the control was not in me. And the contrast was that the participants were empowered from the beginning to step up into their greatness, which is what happened. So it's a big one, this identity of control. So what happens when you step outside of these identities? And in my clients' words, you know how to hold power, you feel powerful, and you are not frightened of it. I was going to write down a list of things that happened, and I thought, I'm going to be cheeky here. And I'm going to say, I'm not going to tell you. I instead am going to invite you into an opportunity that I have invited my clients with this month. So it's the 14th of March here in Sydney. And on Friday, the 11th of March, I invited my clients into a cocktail of boldness and humility. I always love two ways of being that look so contradictory that they shouldn't be together. Boldness and humility. If you were bold and you were also humble with the intention of knowing how to hold power, feeling powerful and not feeling frightened of it, if you were bold and also came from a place of humility, I wonder what would happen. And so that's what I'm inviting you to do this week, this month, is to step up, have an intention to be free of your identities, to be absolutely free to be powerful, to know how to hold your power, to feel powerful and not be frightened of it by being bold and having humility. And this is where the intuitive pull comes, because if you truly choose to experience that, your intuition will show you in the moment when it's the perfect time to be both bold and humble, when it's the most perfect time to share a bold message, a bold question, a bold communication, a bold move, and being humble at the same time. So are you up for that? Let me know, because I guarantee you that your month will be very different, a very different month in the context of how you feel about being powerful. I guarantee you. Finally, I've been playing with my intuition the last couple of weeks with A Course in Miracles studies that I've referred to in previous episodes. And I have felt into a lesson number from A Course in Miracles, and I've gone to that lesson and it's 99% on point. And if it's 1% off point, it's probably just because we're not ready to hear it yet. So I tuned in to the most perfect lesson. You're gonna laugh at this. This is just so funny. I tuned into the most perfect lesson, and in my intuition, I received lesson 54. I went to my Course in Miracles book, which is a very, very thick book, and I just opened up the book, and guess which page or which lesson I opened up to? lesson 54. Did I go flicking? No. There was no bookmark. There was no page turned. It was just there. So this lesson must be shared. I'm not going to share the whole lesson, but just what's really pertinent to our experience today around it's okay to be powerful and being bold and humble at the same time. So lesson 54 has a few ideas that, in fact, are being reviewed. So the first idea is I have no neutral thoughts. I have no neutral thoughts. Neutral thoughts are impossible because all thoughts have power. They will either make a false world or lead me to the real one. But thoughts cannot be without effects. As the world I see arises from my thinking errors, so will the real world rise before my eyes as I let my errors be corrected. My thoughts cannot be neither true nor false. They must be one or the other. What I see shows me which they are. How perfect is that? How perfect. We've just been talking about identities and the realities that lead from buying into those stories and the false world that we experience around our power. How perfect. The next idea in lesson 54 is, what's the final one, because I'm skipping a few, is I'm determined to see. Recognizing the shared nature of my thoughts, I'm determined to see. I would look upon the witnesses that show me the thinking of the world has been changed. I would behold the proof that what has been done through me has enabled love to replace fear, laughter to replace tears, and abundance to replace loss. I would look upon the real world and let it teach me that my will and the will of God are one. Again, how absolutely perfect. Here we are talking about cause and effect, and that when we choose love, love replaces fear. When we choose love, laughter replaces tears. When we choose abundance, abundance replaces loss. Have an incredible March. I will be back. I actually have another episode to publish this week with an incredible young woman called Aliyah, and she's 17. And I look forward to you hearing her incredible story of contribution to the world. I also am letting you know that I'm explicitly stating that my doors to coaching are open. I've had a changing of the guard at the end of 2021 and the beginning of 2022. The people who have joined at the beginning of 2022 are all the people that I've just spoken to you about in this episode who are experiencing magic and more magic to come. And there's a real theme around the people who have joined this year. And it's absolutely related to this theme of being okay to be powerful in an authentic, aligned way. And sometimes identities need to shed, drop off, and we need to remember where we actually belonged, that we believed we didn't. We need to enter those caves and realize that there was always treasure in the irony of life. And so if you're called to be free, if you're called to be so powerful this year, to have such a different experience of yourself, inner and outer experience of yourself, if you're lacking confidence, if you're in chaos, if you're in uncertainty, if you've hit the ceiling, if you're bored and you're called, go to the show notes. There's several ways that you can reach out to me. They're all listed there. I look forward to having a call with you should you be tapped, whether it's a light tap or a big hard knock to come and work with me. I would sincerely love that. Have an amazing March. I'll see you again this week. I'm looking forward to it. Ciao, ciao.